Welcome to segment 2 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on June the 30th in the Memorial Arena, Victoria, BC. Our guest in this segment is Will Smith, and Will, as usual, we're going to be talking about consciousness, so take it away.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First, I read the Pope's encyclical, and my only comment about that is that it seems to me that he's a very technically oriented person. So he used the term acceleration of change. And I think that that's a very apt statement, because what that means is that the rate of change is changing, which is the second derivative, it's when things start going crazy. So we all know what it feels like to accelerate when we're changing velocity. But the second, when the change in velocity is changing, that's called, in physics, that's called jerk. And I think that's a good term, because if you think of going over a waterfall as being acceleration, so you know what it feels like to go over the waterfall. When you land in the pool underneath the falls, that's when you get jerked around, and that's when you're being tossed around by the water and anything else that's floating around. So that's what he's referring to, as a time when things are changing so rapidly that it's chaotic. And I think that he used that term very specifically. I can't comment on the rest of what he said, but I think that means that he's aware that we're in a very difficult time. So that leads into, I read another book recently called The Magic of Findhorn, and it was published in 1976. The book The Magic of Findhorn. Okay. Findhorn is an eco-village, sort of the original prototype of all eco-villages in northern Scotland, and I visited there with my partner in 2008.
It was world famous.
Yeah,
I remember
she really
hearing
wanted
about
to see it. She'd heard about the vegetables growing to be of enormous size, and so she wanted to see it. Right. So I picked up this book, and I read a couple of things in it that were very interesting, but I'd like to read from 2 paragraphs from a chapter called Chapter 10, Lovers from Beyond the Stars. Both modern physics and Don Juan, that Don Juan is from Carlos Castaneda, he was the shaman, demonstrate the ineffableness of reality, the inability to tell about what reality really is. The thought that grows into the form is becoming the new reality, as the causal laws of old science are increasingly less operative in our lives. The myth of Findhorn is the myth of creation, of a rebirth of man emerging into a totally new consciousness. The myth is not a few individuals gaining a higher understanding of spiritual and cosmic principles behind life and creation, but a period when the planet as one shall begin to strip away the old personality patterns, the old thought forms, prejudices, and neuroses that distort the collective psyche, and in its place reveal the true divine nature of the planet. As with the individual, this new understanding and realization releases a great wave of energy and vitality into the planetary body, energy which further sweeps away the old and brings to the surface all that has to be cleansed and purified. So this myth of creation is in opposition to our current myth of destruction, where most people think that we're headed for death and destruction. So the withdrawal of energies from the old world, the old cultural institutions, the old social configurations, is accompanied by a fortress mentality in those who would remain behind, those who protect and defend all that is sacred. The ensuing conflict is like a man fighting his shadow. The powerful armies, the rather bizarre entities known as multinationals, the rigid and doctrinaire governments suggest a planetary body lacking divinity, which submits to a cancer-like disease, a body which destroys itself. We are armed to the teeth on a conscious level, ready to resist the rapid changes that carry in the new age. So this is really interesting to me, because it was written almost 40 years ago.
Sounds like today.
And it sounds like a very, very cogent analysis of what's going on today. And it's very interesting to me that the Pope is very aware that this this is what's happening, that we're going through this time of accelerating change. And how do you deal with that? It's not a time when we've hit this peak and then we're still accelerating. And people don't like change in general. I mean, we don't handle it well. So what do you think about that? What do you think about that as a commentary on...
Well, you and I were talking earlier about where we deal with this. And I said I'm dealing with it more down here. And I think you're just at a kind of, I don't want to, I'll say higher, but maybe different level of consciousness, seeing it from somewhere else. And we were talking about what we can do. And I said, all I can do is, you know, I'm down here trying to beat these people off.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of doing the same thing.
Well, I want the world to make sense to me and to everybody else. And so if the world is just headed for some kind of destruction, you know, if the world ends, well, I mean, that doesn't sound like a very good thing. I mean, we might as well all just have a great time then. But I think what we're called to do is to participate, and so each person has to find where they're comfortable. And by participating, I don't necessarily mean, you know, fighting. I mean finding out where we fit. So some people want to give information to other people to show what they're seeing, and I certainly fall into that group. But I feel like I've spent my whole life being sort of an activist, trying to see what's going on and to create at least a vision for my own life and the people, my family, the people that I'm responsible for. But I must say that right now I don't know where we're going. I mean, I don't want to create a new system because I don't feel that we're capable of creating new systems that are capable of. I don't think we're capable of creating the systems that are capable of dealing with the magnitude of change that we're going to face. So my thing is that we're called to be observers so we don't miss much. Instead of, I mean, if you've lived around people, there's some people who don't understand the world around them, right? I mean, you've certainly been around people like that, right?
Yeah, I'm one of them.
And it's not comfortable to not to understand the world around.
You mentioned in the word participation, and to me that's one of the big losses, is that we're not really allowed to participate in the creating of our own world on a day-to-day basis. I mean, important decisions are being made constantly that, you know, that say you're going to have a job or you're not going to have a job, and your family's going to be well off or your family's going to be poor, or you're going to have to drive for an hour to get to work every day, or you're going to be homeless, or you're going to have to, both of you are going to have to work in a family to afford to buy a condo, right? So all these important decisions are being made, but our rulers, don't let us participate in any of them. We can decide what it is we want to buy, if we've got the money to buy a beautiful mansion or we're living in a tenement, but we don't have the power to decide that maybe that's not the society we want. We'd rather have a society where everybody has decent housing and it's nice communities, and like Pleasantville.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'd want something closer to that, but those decisions we're not allowed to participate in. And that, I think, is what bothers me more than anything else. And that's where I am kind of trying to get in on the struggle, or whatever it is, if there even is a struggle.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the current political systems. I mean, I feel fairly disenfranchised from the systems wherever I've been.
You are. We all are.
You know, right now, with the passage of, I think it's C-24. So if I did decide to become a Canadian citizen, since I already have a nationality, since I already have American citizenship, then I would essentially become a second-class Canadian citizen, because I could be deported at the whim of somebody in a higher level of government. At least that's how I understand this bill. So I think that's something that, I mean, in a microcosm, my life is how a lot of people feel. They just feel like they're disenfranchised from the system. And so I think that what we have to do is, at least for me, I have to admit that I have no control over this system. I have no control over what the Canadian government does, or the American government does, or any government does for that matter. And I think that my reaction to that is that what I do have control over is I can learn to grow my own food, for example. And so I want to do that. I do that to some extent. And I notice that my own life has become, well, it's more interesting to grow your own food, to have a relationship with the food that you grow, and to actually participate in deciding which types of, say, kale or lettuce you're going to grow, and what other vegetables. And I really like that. I mean, to me, that seems very real. That seems like something that really gets me in touch with where I live on this planet, and I can't stay in my head when I'm thinking about what I'm going to grow. I like that.
And my feeling is that I have faith in the better side of people and humanity, and I think that if all of us had, just in general, a bigger say about what was happening in our towns and communities and neighborhoods and provinces and nation, that things would be better. We would make things better if we had more of a voice. So I want to get that voice back, if we ever had it.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I don't know how I could disagree with that. I don't know whether it's under our control or not. I mean, I see these systems as sort of being imposed on us, and right now I just want to stand back and watch everything that's happening, because everything is so monumental, everything is so big, and it just seems like when we get together after 1 week, we have a hard time catching up on everything that's happened.
Yeah, it's an amazing time.
It is.
Consciousness changing. Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Will Smith, and thank you for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.